What's going on, everybody? Today we have something a little bit different. I'm on kid duty inside the kitchen, and today I decided to spend the morning with River rebuilding an old paintball gun that I had. So my brothers and I were pretty big into paintball for a number of years. We started like in 2000, 2002, somewhere around there. We finished probably 2008 to 2010. And during those years, paintball gun technology, I think, was probably exponential annually. So the gun that I have here is something that was probably developed in the 80s, a little bit refined a little bit during the 90s into the 2000s, and then became almost obsolete. But we'll go through the parts that it needs. We're going to go ahead and fix it up. And I found a little bit of air, and I found a couple paintballs lying around. We're going to rebuild a paintball gun. Where is it? Where's the pew-pew? And anyway, we'll see how this goes. Wish me luck. But hopefully we can get it shooting maybe a couple paintballs by the end of the day. So enjoy. So the gun I'm taking apart is a 2002 STO WGP Autococker. Again, it was built in 2002. I bought it probably 2003, 2004 used from a guy at a local shop. And the gun at that time was completely mechanical. And I think this is kind of the trick with autocockers in general. They were one of the few guns that were able to really evolve over time. And what I mean is, if you look in the 90s, everybody was playing 10-man in the woods. That was the tournament style of the day. If you look in the late 90s and early 2000s, we really started seeing more of the speedball arena. So the guns obviously had to shoot a lot more paint. They had to be more efficient. They had to be more accurate. And autocockers really were able to make that evolution over time. This gun has been through 3 pretty distinct iterations, and again, we're going to get to this here with a couple graphics, but ultimately, the base gun is all mechanical. It's just a mechanical engineer's dream, really, with all the different pneumatic systems and levers and slides and all that kind of fun stuff. So the autococker in the 90s really was one of the two mechanical guns you saw in tournaments, and it was all mechanical, kind of like this graphic shows here. So basically, the trigger and the slide, the 3-way valve, all of this stuff had to be perfectly timed by somebody who knew what they were doing. By 2004, let's say, most of these mechanical components could be swapped out for computer. So this really made the gun shoot from about 7 or 8 balls per second up to over 20 balls per second. It also had electronic eyes, so it could sense the paint and everything else. No sooner did that really evolve into the ultimate autococker. Another company developed a MQ valve kit that replaced even the last bit of the mechanical equipment inside the gun. So this valve was basically the ultimate solution for smoothness to kind of keep up with the higher end markers of the day. Now, for me, I bought one of the prototype kits. I never did get it working, and what you're seeing me do here is actually remove that level 3 component back down to a level 2, to where it's a little more maintenanceable. There's more parts on the used market. You can kind of, again, it's a little easier to work on, a little more robust. And yeah, it's not, maybe the ultimate, but for me and what I intend to do with this gun, it's perfectly fine. So basically, I'm taking all that equipment back out and installing in good old-fashioned ANS high flow valve, pretty heavy hammer, and a fairly lightweight spring on the inside of the body. River's over here playing her game. She ended up clearing the table off several times while we were doing this, so that was really good fun to pick up all these little pieces. So yeah, right now I'm just installing the spring, the hammer, kind of adjusting all of the things. And again, a lot of the stuff I haven't touched in probably well over 10 years, so I'm kind of learning, kind of relearning as I go. I actually used to work at a paintball store for a couple years, just more of a gun tech. It was more what I enjoy to do. I did meet some customers and things like that every now and then, but for me, playing with some of these older guns was the highlight of the week. So what I'm doing now is just screwing on the factory back block, installing, I forget what that part's even called, the bolt, some pins, things like that, and effectively, this is what the gun looked like for me back in 2005. This is how I shot it. Again, in 2005, between 2005 and 2000, let's say 8, it was pretty much just tourney ball. at that point. And this gun wasn't really heavily used for tournaments or anything like that. A little bit as a backup, but I kind of just held on to it, tinkered with it, but I really didn't shoot it too much. So right now, I'm basically just taking out some components that I had to go buy from another electronic frame. You know, these parts are obviously pretty old. They don't make them any longer. So I scoured eBay and Facebook Marketplace and some of the forums and things like that. Found a couple components just to kind of get this running again. River's over there playing with her Group B Rally Audi. It's like a cast model car that we bought for her, or we found it somewhere. I don't remember where. She loves that thing. She's been carrying it around for days now, talking about the racing car. So yeah, just tidying up the frame, tucking the wires and things like that. There's a lot of wiring that, you know, was never really intended to be in the vicinity of the guns, so you got to be really careful in this part not to pinch wires, crimp wires, crush wires, things like that. I don't have any replacement, so it's kind of a trick. Luckily, Planet Eclipse still had the manual online, believe it or not, for this system, and I kind of walked through it really quickly to just look at the mechanical setups and just refresh myself a little bit on what needed to be done and what the settings look like. Luckily for me, they have like a factory reset, which was kind of handy. I just basically punched that in and said, okay, you know, the gun's built around these specs, so this is the type of these are the type of settings to use and all that fun stuff. Oddly enough, you know, this gun, even from today's standards, a little bit advanced, because instead of having a micro switch or any sort of switch for the trigger, it actually has a little laser and a light beam that the trigger actually, you know, breaks that light beam, and that's how the gun knows how to fire. Which is kind of funny, because when I took it outside, just do a dry test right before putting paintballs in it, the sunlight, I totally forgot about this, but if you take the grips off, the sunlight actually affects the infrared light beam, and so the gun won't fire. So it's just kind of interesting. I don't know if that's why no one caught on to it, or the cost of manufacturing. It really never caught on, but anyway, it was kind of like, again, just a reminder, a little bit of a blast from the past. So right now, just reinstalling the frame, kind of like you guys saw me take it apart, and really no difference here, just making sure I don't pinch wires once again. I mentioned before that this gun has a electronic sensor for paintballs, so as the guns got more complicated, obviously paint had to be fed a lot faster, and electronic hoppers and things of that nature also came into play, obviously. This gun, along with most guns after the year 2002, has its own independent sensing system, so that it, you know, it detects when a paintball's in the breech, and it doesn't crush a paintball, you know, with the bolt of the gun. So just trying to get those wires lined up and being sure there's nothing critical going on there. I think here I'm just test firing it a little bit. You know, you can hear all the solenoids move in the gun, which is kind of handy. So you know things are working and things like that. Again, I don't know if I've ever actually had this particular electronic computer on this gun run with me. I think I bought it secondhand, just trying to get that other valve system to work that I took out, and it never worked. So all of these things were kind of questions. I wasn't really sure if it was going to work for me. Yeah, setting the hammer preload. We're starting to figure out what springs are. I think she's playing some sort of game where she's feeding something. Doing a little bit of online research, making sure I'm not missing anything critical. Yeah, all pretty simple. So I think, you know, really after I tidied the frame up, got everything kind of mechanically installed, didn't pinch any wires, I ended up installing the tank and completely blowing out the regulator O-rings. They were just completely toast. I don't know what grease they used in them, but it was completely gone. So I ended up over-pressurizing the gun and blowing a couple other O-rings and things like that in the process. So I ended up having to take the regulators apart and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I think the gun cleaned up pretty well. You know, all the parts are there. I ran out of pipe thread tape sealant. So there's a couple leaks that you're going to hear in the firing video here in a second. But at the end of the day, the gun's not beat up. Looks pretty good. I think it's as good as it's going to get for this moment. I installed a pressure gauge on the bottom that I had sitting in my box just to see basically where the pressures were setting at. Who knows if the high pressure regulator still is working correctly. But I set it at about 350 PSI, which is about right for these guns, and it seemed to shoot, you know, pretty good. So here comes the firing video. Let's see what happens. This is probably going to go really poorly, but I found an old hopper. I don't know where my halo went. Whatever. It'll be fine. And I found some paintballs that I can't tell you how long it's been. These are so old. So they're probably going to break a lot of paint and things like that. But you know what? I'm just kind of curious to see the gun shoot. And I've got a couple hundred PSI. So I'm going to try to fight through the leaks, adjust the paintball gun using old paint and a hopper that's not force-fed on an electronic gun. Let's just see what happens. So here goes nothing. But I don't put them all in, just in case. Oh my gosh. These are ovals. They're not even round anymore. Ugh. This is gonna be bad. 400 PSI now. Whoa. This is actually working pretty well. See if you can, let's see if I can do it like this. Oh man, look how inaccurate that is. Hey, it pinched the ball. I might be shooting a little hot. Maybe. Work. This paint's good for maybe 10 feet. Oh. Wow, okay, so this is a little bit of a flashback. You know, after just a couple O-rings, it's still kind of leaky, but at least I was able to get it to cycle. The gun is way better than I remember it being, which is kind of interesting. I do wish I had an actual hopper. I could find my halo or something like that, so I could actually get some balls per second out of the gun. But you know what? I'm pretty excited. This was a lot of fun, and maybe in 2020 I'll try to find a pickup game somewhere at a rec ball or something like that, just to, you know, again, maybe live the past a little bit longer with this machine. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. I know this was a little bit different than normal, but again, it was kind of nice to get a view back in the past and you know, play with something. So anyway, thanks again for watching if you tuned in this far, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.